Come on. And we're live. Hey, guys, welcome in. We got a few people in. I am Scab. We all know that. I'm glad y'all are here. Let's see. We got Clemens. Maurice is here. Charles is here. Tina's here. And hopefully we'll pick up some more as we go. Guys, listen, if you guys in the chat have a few questions for Blackie, let me know. Put them in the chat and we will address them as we come. Blackie, if you would, man, take a second and just tell us who you are.
Okay.
And how you got on YouTube.
Okay. My name is Blackie Thomas. I'm a Southern woodsman. I'm somebody that does a lot of camping, outdoor stuff, fishing, camping, stuff like that. I worked for years trying to feed the family, hunting and fishing. And also I worked with Boy Scouts and everything else. And I started doing YouTube videos in 2009, and I've been doing it ever since. And predominantly my channel is about showing skills, answering questions, demonstrating how to do stuff, be it knives or whatever. Since this is a knife channel, I worked with WC Knives, William Collins, for a while, and helped him develop the WCSK and the WC Blackbird, which is kind of like the knife for me. And so that's my background in that. I've used pocket knives, big knives, butcher knives. I'm one of them hands-on guys with a lot of real-time experience with a knife. Besides that, I'm just a Southern redneck trying to make it like you guys.
Well, the term that I like is master woodsman, and I like that.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you the truth. We got Trapper Dan in here. We got Mike Simmons in here. Vladimir, what's up, brother? My guy Bladen Cloak. We've got John Kennedy's in here. Good seeing you. John Gruggs is in here. Tony Boombot. So we got some guys. So here's the deal, Blackie. I'm glad you kind of met knives.
Mm-hmm.
One of question from a knife lover who's really a staple in the knife community. Keith Carpenter's in the house with us. How are you? So Blackie, if you don't mind, I'm gonna take 1 second. I'm gonna pull this up. The question was this. What's up, Matt? The question simply was this. You've said before a kukri was your go-to knife, or at one time a kukri was your go-to knife. Is that still the case? And then I'll do a quick follow-up on that.
Yes. As far as a chopping tool, a carry on your belt, carry on the pack, yes, the kukri is, to me, in the Eastern woodland, just the most versatile of all of it. It can be used as a draw knife. It's heavy enough, if it's properly made, to pound tent stakes in. It acts like a froe, so I can baton it through bigger, gnarly wood and bust it up. As a chopper, it's just unrivaled, dude, because the way it bends, when you strike, it's already bent over and it slices back through it. Your cutting power is much improved. And so for the size, weight, it can be like a hatchet, it can be like a machete, it can be a digging tool. I did some of my first videos that really took off with what I did, one called the Field Guide to the Kukri, and showing how it works. It's still my favorite kukri. It's still my favorite go-to. And if we're going into an unknown situation where I haven't been here before, there's going to be a kukri on my belt to supplement my smaller knives.
Follow up real quick, and we're going to come back to the kukri. To follow up, and I know the answer, what companion knife, what belt knife do you carry?
I carry a WC Knives Blackbird or the old Blackbird prototype, Master Woodsman prototype. Love those knives. It's got that woodsman's grind to it, and it really, really works for me. It's big enough belt knife to do the job, yet it's not so awkward. I can do detail work with it. But for me personally, there seems to be a break point between the small blade that I want small, and then that big bow hunking chopper that this is the perfect size between to handle 90% of the jobs for my usage.
The WC knives, and I notoriously say WC and then William Collins. William Collins, that's WC.
Yep.
That's one knife I want to get my hands on. But that's a knife that you've got a lot of practical input in. That's a knife that you won't take, but you could take some credit for in the design.
Help refined a little bit.
refined it a little bit. So that's your companion. That's your chopper. One of the videos that I watched that I go back to is you did a video on your kukri, and you did it. You've got 2 or 3 different edges on your kukri.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us a little bit about that, and just kind of, Maurice, how you doing? Stefan, how you doing? Talk to us a little bit about that and the thought process behind it, if you would.
Okay. The kukri being that curved blade. Okay. And let us define. When we say kukri, there are different size, weight, thicknesses of kukri. If it's really thin, that's a surrupti. Think machete. Champura means chopper. Think hatchet. Mine's a champura, it's a chopper, a hatchet. Right in front of the grip, that like 2-inch section right there, that's your knife edge. That's for doing this work, using it like a regular old belt knife. Okay. From there, it goes into the curve. That beginning of that curve, we call it the sweet spot. That's when you're striking and it slices back to you. Think like a machete. That's where I can pop vines, limbs, or stuff that's in my way and just do like that and pop it. And it would just hit and cleanly snap it off like a laser did it. Okay. You go right around the edge of that curve, and that's your power chopper. And so that edge is a little more blunt. The knife edge is kept near about razor sharp, back toward the back. And then as we go forward, it becomes less and less sharp. I don't change the bevel as much as I kind of how much I sharpen it, because a thin edge is easily rolled and impact. So I'm not chopping back here very close to the grip. All you're chopping is halfway forward, see? And up there, that front third, that much of the front of it, that's your hatchet edge, and it should be like a hatchet. That's where I'm grubbing. I'm going to be cutting roots. I'm going to be whatever. And the last ½ inch, that tip of the kukri, is dull as butter, because that's a digging tool at that point. You don't stab anything with a kukri. You could,
right,
but you're wasting the effort. But that's your digging tool. That's my blunt impact, bust it. So if I've got something, I'm trying to just hit it like a hammer and bust it, that last ½ inch in the tip. And that was the thing that shocked Dan Lutz when he picked mine up, that it was razored at this end and the front end was dull as butter. I mean, you could look at it and see the edge. And he's like, why don't you sharpen the tip? Because he worked with small knives, and the tip, how sharp was the tip, see, was his focus. And so the idea of a dull tip, oh my God. And then after he saw how I used it to bust up roots, bust wood up, split with it, harpoon it in and crack it out and to split off gnarly wood, then he began to understand you couldn't damage that tip now, see. And so the edges, as it starts at the back, it's the very sharpest. I put my most time in that. So that 1.5 inches, 2 inches. Beginning of the curve, it's still sharp, because that's my popping. I want to hit it and hook and slice right through. Going around the curve, the edge is not quite as sharp. It's a little more robust, because that's going to be the blunt impact of chopping. Right. And the very tip, dead dull. That's a digging tool at that point.
And that's kind of what I was going to say with the chopping part. You want a more robust.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it sharp to where it does what it does and protects the edge.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just more of a robust, just a hard hitter, go through stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Blackbird.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody asked, and I didn't want to go too far past this. They had a question. The Blackbird size wise. Let me find the question. That's between. Is that a little bit? But what is that? How much, like, compared to your 110?
Okay, hold on a second. I'm in my place. 1 second.
That'll work. Chuck and Steel, Carl Ruger, how are you guys doing? Rusty Knife Lover, how are you? Brother Stefan, Matthew Baum, yes, I do need a new Georgia hat desperately. I'll get one. Grugsy, good seeing you. Rob, how are you? Rob Slagle asked the question. I wanted to make sure that we got that done.
That gives you an idea.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, reiterate, because it's this is actually kind of like a kukri design anyway. That's one of the reasons that when I did my video on the kukris back around 2009, 2010, William Collins saw it, and it kind of inspired him to try to put that change of design, those edges, onto a belt knife. And that's the reason he designed this knife. This is the prototype. And so this right here is your razor sharp Sears cut knife, where it starts this curve right here. And then you've got this on my actual big chopping kukri. This is the sharp edge. This is a sharp edge because it's supposed to hook. See how it goes around the finger? It would hit and drive back. So when you chop, you're actually hooking around it and cutting back. So it slices rather than just hitting it. A straight edge, when you hit, you only get in contact that way. But with this way, when you hit, it's wrapping around it, see? So you're getting a bigger cutting circle. Then this edge on the actual kukri is your main hatchet, chopping, etc. And then from like there up, that's blunt because that's a digging tool. And it's also when I'm going to take and go whack and break something with it, like I'm breaking bone. I broke the pelvis of a deer before because we were quartering one up and cutting it up. And rather than trying to cut through it, I just took that tip and backed up, and I've got practice and experience where I could direct my focus. And it was like hitting it with a ball peen hammer. I busted the bone. So you just bust, separate, and get it out of the way.
While we're right here, before we continue on, guys, I just, everybody that's coming in, Jerbs, good to see you, man. I want to stress this because I've heard you say this, and I think this is important, and I think it's important to bring up now. Blackie is from South Alabama. Chuck and Steele, JB's from up that way. So when we're talking South Alabama Eastern Woodlands, North Florida Eastern Woodlands. Mm-hmm. It will vary where you are, but that's what we're talking about. That's where. So just bear that in mind as the conversation goes. John Kennedy's in here. That dude loves that Scrama. He let me play with that. That thing is just badass, man. And Trapper Dan's in here as well. Love Trapper Dan. Trapper. Good seeing you guys. Carl's here. So here's the deal. And I ask you about this. And guys, here's kind of the direction. If you got a question, ask it. We'll get it as we go, as we can. If we skip some or miss some, we're sorry, but I got a certain direction I want to take. Blackie, I ask you, have you ever been caught in a situation, and let's go with winter. You're at camp. Let's say you're doing a scout. And you decide to go out in the evening. You're out in the evening doing a quick scout, grab the haversack, whatever. Have you ever been in a situation where you got caught away from camp and had to camp for the night with what you had?
Yes. I went up into Talladega National Forest many years ago with 2 or 3 friends, and the object of the game was we were going to set this base camp on this really nice overlook. Well, as things would have it, when we got up there, we didn't get to where we wanted to go. And my buddy is doing the guiding. And so the next evening, and this was in the winter, the next evening, right about 2 hours before dark, I said, I want to go look at the overlook. And he said, we just go down the trail that way, It's about 2 miles to it. And I shoved off. One, I was overconfident. I didn't know these woods. We're in mountainous areas. I'm a lowland person. I understand the concept, but at the same time, it's very easy to get mechanical injury. You slip, a rolling rock. I mean, it's rocky ground. You break a hip, break an arm, something, and you're in a bad way. But I shoved off anyway. I got back in there, and I got completely turned around. What I did not realize was there was this trail that went along the edge of this like canyon area, and it split, and one is up here on the top, and one is about 8 feet down. Well, he meant to take the 8-foot down trail. I didn't. I took the top trail. And once I'd gone, and I kept going, trying to find this overlook, and there wasn't one. And when I finally realized, okay, I'm out of time, I got to turn around and make my way back, that's where I messed up, because I went to retrace my trail. And when I got up there, those 2 trails run together for a minute, and I took the wrong off. And so sunset, here you are in the middle of nowhere. I don't know the direction. I tried yelling, whatever, no contact, pre-cell phone days. And so you've just got what you've got on you. That's it. And so after about an hour of trying to retrace, figure out where did I go wrong? Couldn't do it. Done got too dark. Mechanical injury became too big a risk. I was going to be forced to just spend the night out here. All right, I've got my gear with me as far as a haversack. It's going to be kind of cool tonight. The number one thing I need to do is insulate myself as much as possible. So I found a nice big old oak tree. It was near some pines, and I kicked me up a great big old bird's nest, it ain't gonna rain, of pine straw and put it at the base of the tree. In front of that, I built my fire so that I could sit down and lean back against the tree with my legs, my inner legs especially, facing toward the fire, and I went to gathering firewood. I kept listening to see if I could hear my companions. I gathered me up a handful of sticks. Now, this is one of them little tricks that you learn when you've been out coon hunting and stuff. Get you a handful of sticks and sharpen the tips of them, put them close at hand. During the night, when it gets quiet, you know, when you have sundown, even in the summer or winter, a lot of times you have a lot of insect noise or whatever. And when that kind of calms down, you can hear a lot further away. And so sitting there facing my fire, I could hear cars on the highway that way. So I'd take one of them sticks and I'd harpoon it in the dirt for my relative position. That way is where I'm hitting it. During the night, I heard something else. I'd stick another stick. Well, when I got up in the morning, there was 5 sticks going that way and 2 that way. Guess which way the road probably is? It gave me a point to start the next day to try to walk my way back out of here.
Right.
Because I knew the road we walked in on, and it was the only road around here. So if I could get back to that road, it might be a 10-mile walk, but I could get back to camp then, see. I had boxed myself in. But as far as I had enough gear to get me through, and that was the big thing. Question, would you rather carry a blade and make your buck saw or carry a folding saw like a Baco and why? Most times I'll carry a folding saw because the large buck saws and stuff are construction tools to me. They're great in a winter camp. And if you're having to drop down small trees in the dead of winter to keep a big fire going, absolutely tote a big old buck saw. But a buck saw to me is like carrying a big full-size axe. We're building something when we come out here. The small saws, the Bacos or the silky saws, is a better bushcraft, woodscraft saw because that way I can quickly make what I need. 99 times out of 100, my needs are going to be like 2 or 3 inch or less diameter wood. So that Baco is just like butter. It goes right through it. Same thing with the silky. Where I want that big buck saws, we're taking 4-inch diameter trees and making posts in the ground. We're building a foundation for a hunting cabin or some other platform. That's when I want that big one. But to me, a full-size axe and the full-size saw becomes that. I incorporated that into my Blackbird haversack to carry that blade because once I get there, I can fabricate all my parts, see. And how much is a blade? A few bucks. Well, if we're building a camp back over there somewhere, I'll haul in that, I'll make that saw, and then that saw is going to stay there for me to come back next weekend. I'm not going to haul it back and forth. That $6 blade, and I fabricate the rest, becomes the camp saw, and that'll stay at that camp as long as we got the camp. I'll haul in water or filtration or something, and that's building an improved camp. I hope to do some of that this fall. Me and Bear have talked about building an improved camp on his land where you build benches and tables and stuff out of the terrain to have an improved campsite.
I think that would be fantastic.
Oh, it'd be a fun series to do. Me and Bear are looking forward to it. What's my favorite mass-produced knife? Okay, we're talking about a belt knife or a pocket knife. If it's a pocket knife, okay, if it's a pocket knife, it's a Victorinox Field Master, best pocket knife. It's got all the tools I need, saws, pins, all of it. What sold this to me was it's got, when you flip open the screwdriver right there, in that little slot, there's actually a straight pin, like you sew with a pin. when you got that little bitty splinter you can't hardly see under the tip of a fingernail, dude, that is a cat's meow right there. Kukris don't dig out small stuff real easy.
Right.
You want a small, precise. And so that's what sold me on that originally. But it has become, I've had my first one I had like 10, 12 years. And I just recently got this one as a replacement because I basically wore out my old one. My favorite mass-produced belt knife, if I was going to tell somebody just right now pick up one and start out with it, would be a Mora. Good quality blades for the price, especially when somebody's learning. Don't invest in the high dollar to begin with. Find your style. Find how your technique is. I know a lot of big woodsmen, dude, that they want, look at big old huge Dan Lutz. His favorite knife in the world was a 2-inch blade. You know, I want a bigger blade. And so you'll develop your style. And so I tell them, buy Mora, learn with that. Buy one of the Condor bush lowers. Decent knife for the price. Yes, I know the knife guys are going to say, oh my God, it's not. Agreed. But we're talking about for starting, after you get some skill and experience, invest in a good knife that fits your things. I've had several people point out that my Master Woodsman is a $250 knife. And, oh my God, I can't afford that. I say, really? How much did that phone on your belt cost?
Yeah.
I bet that $600-700 phone, but you have the skill and the ability to work that phone. To you, it's a worthwhile tool. I run around with a $70 Walmart phone because it's just a phone to me. So what is your skill level? Invest in that.
And I think that I'm glad you hit on that a lot. Lacey Lace, welcome in, honey. Michael B., good seeing you, buddy. I'm glad you hit on that because, and you're in a room now, John from Addicted to Blades too. Now you're in a room now, Blackie, where you're going to have all kind of price range, just like with your crowd. We're going to have a lot of different guys with a lot of different knives. The starting out, I think, is one of the most overlooked things. And you actually have a couple videos for beginners, correct?
Yes.
And even for kids, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
How would
Go ahead.
How you going to teach skill? And everybody's got to start somewhere. And there's a learning curve. And for example, I was asked to teach a church group. And one of the things they wanted me to do is show them knife skill, teach them a little bit of knife skill. And so I went to the dollar store and I bought them $1 stainless steel pieces of junk kitchen knife. You know what I'm talking about. Metal handle. It's all stainless steel. It's a piece of utter garbage. I think it was like 12 people in the group. I got 12 of those knives for like $12, sharpened them up where they actually had an edge. And that morning at 8 o'clock, we started out trying to do a tri-stick on soft mimosa wood. By lunchtime, half of it broke the edge, rolled it, warped it, something. It was horrible. Okay. We had lunch. After lunch, we came back and I gave them a Mora, just a $15 Mora. The light year experience different because now they had a better knife, but they got a little knife skill. They were struggling trying to do it with this awkward piece of junk. Then I hand them a decent knife and suddenly it becomes easy. If I'd started out with that knife, it would have been as awkward as well. You have to know darkness to know light. You've got to have a basis of comparison. And so I tell people, they said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I said, don't break the bank. Try everything. There's a lot of the tactical knives that I don't use, but that don't mean that it's not a good, viable knife.
Right.
People that live in the cities have different needs and requirements than I do. And I came up doing that. I had all the Rambo knives and the, snap, crackle, pop, all kinds of tactical knives and stuff coming up. Yeah. I lived next to a military base. We had all those knives. And it was, the Gerber Mark II dagger.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Loved classic. It's a tent stake.
Yeah.
It's got some inspiration. Go ahead.
one of the things I was going to say is, and I was going to show, and I got it right the first time. This is one from JR.
Mm-hmm.
And JR keeps me in LT rights, and just that spine will cut you there. But what I was going to say is, and I love a good Scandi grind. So I was going to ask you, what's your favorite grind for a knife? For bushcrafting. Let's just keep it in our realm.
For that, it's a toss up between the Scandi and the Saber, to be honest with you.
Okay.
The Scandi is better for cuts up until you get halfway up the blade, and then it thickens up too much. The Saber, or true taper, is better, and it slices meat better, but it gets stuck easy as well, because it is such a uniform thing that you go pushing and you go a lot deeper, and now it gets stuck. And so each one has their strengths and balances. My Master Woodsman has got an 11-degree bevel, and all those different angles kind of prevent me from getting it stuck easy because of that. But if I bear down, it's basically, it thickens up right there. I get it a wedging action. So when you're trying to split something, you don't want a razor blade to go between it. You want it to be like a wedge, so it starts prying it out. See? So I'm trying to bear down and go through it. I want it to pry out. So a Scandi is better than that. But if I'm having to cut up, big hunks of meat, Saber is fantastic because it just glides through the meat. It just depends on what you're doing,
That's a big thing. Tom, buddy, I'm getting old. Tom Ritter's in the house. Good seeing you, Tom. I'm getting old, man. I'm sorry. I'm glad you made it. Let's see. The Cold Steel Drop Forge Wasp reminds me of the Gerber Mark II. Yeah, it does. I wanted to say this too, and I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, the smartest fellow, but this is a realization that I'm coming to, Blackie, and I've noticed this over the past couple months, right? I'd put out a video, it'd be really good, and I'd be excited. And then I'd do one, and people are going to be kind to you, but in my heart, I'm going, but what I've started to understand is this, especially with this channel. One day I'm going to do this. I'll do a bushcrafter, right?
Mm-hmm.
The next day I'll do, let's say, a kept heart. I might do a Nesmic, and then I might do a drop point, a clip point. I might do an axe, and I've just come to that realization. Hey, dumbass, you're using a different blade every day, so you got to change up some. So instead of forcing a knife, and this goes into what you were saying, what I've learned to do is stop forcing and let the knife do the work, if that makes sense.
It does. There is no perfect knife. There is the perfect knife for this job, right, and that's the dead wrong knife for that job. So there's more than one socket in a socket set for a reason. Different jobs should have different applications. Most of your hands-on knife skill will apply up or down the board within reason. Okay. And so using a knife gives you a deeper knowledge of that knife over time. I was challenged many, many years ago by a good friend of mine that it was the year of the K-bar, and I had to use a K-bar for any cutting job that it was capable of doing. So I didn't have to split trees with it, but from making dinner to whatever, cut your fingernails, whatever, it was a K-bar. And for a full year, I did the year of the K-bar. And at the end of the year, I could tell you about anything you want to know about using the K-bar, and the strengths and weaknesses, because I'd gone in depth. I did a year of the kukri. My friend Micah Colvin dared me to do that the first time. And I ended up with quite a kukri collection at that time, trying to do all the jobs. Could you do it with kukri? From a little bitty biltong that big, which is a jerky knife, what it translates, all the way up to this huge thing to do the job of an axe. It was a kukri. And so that's where that field guide to the kukri came from, was my experience from that. Now, do I have a greater depth of knowledge in that? Yes. But at the same time, I've stayed away from a lot of designs of knives because I just didn't see the use of it. Not to say it's not a bad knife. It
Right.
wasn't something I had an interest in.
Right.
And so that's what you got to do. It's one, what is your enjoyment? Do you want to pull out a Nessie and try it? Great. I mean, it's got some unique features to it. On the other hand, one of the tactical knives, has advantages and has uses. It's all a tool. What socket do I need in this set and for why? I mean, that's the bottom line to look at.
That's one of the things too. And I'll be honest with you, tactical, I like it, and that's the kid in me. Okay,
Yeah.
That's just the kid in me. I like it. Am I ever going? I've had to use one. Unfortunately, I think we talked about this at camp. We're not going to talk about it now, but the idea that I'm coming in now with, and Dwayne, how are you guys as you're coming in? Welcome. I don't want to take away from the conversation, but I do want to say to the chat, man, thank y'all for being interactive. Guys, there's a lot of content creators in the chat. Somebody, Gerbs, if you would start posting some links, let's get some guys some subs. But what I've come to the point, Blackie, is this.
Mm-hmm.
I just celebrated 2 years on YouTube.
Right. Congratulations.
Thank you. We're in year 3. Year 3 is challenging ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So choppers is my jam. I love choppers. I love kukris. I love all things chopper. I love big knives. I love chopping. But the truth is, I want to challenge myself now with some, and JR has sent me and got some more coming, a lot of Nesmith style.
Mm-hmm.
That's challenging. And speak to, if you would, just speak on the Nesmith, and then maybe kind of go into the Kephart, if you would.
Sure.
Maybe some strengths, maybe some weaknesses. And guys, if you've got questions, JB, great question a while ago. If you got questions, put them up, and we'll hit Blackie up for as long as he's here.
The Nesmith, you got to understand Nesmith's time and what he was doing. Now, I fully believe, and I've made a Nesmith a couple times before, there was a knife that was very popular in the late 1800s called the Buffalo Skinner. Now, that name is a misnomer. And when I talked to Dan Lutz about this and I explained it, his eyes went over, oh my God, because he didn't realize what it's saying. The handle and the blade is curved, okay? And you think it's for doing this, like slicing bacon. It wasn't. It's a fleshing tool for buffalo skinners. You use the back of the knife as a 90-degree to clean the hide. See, it was a nick a little here and turn the knife over so it was curved like that, and you're going around the round, meat. It's over a log to clean it. It's a fleshing tool.
So when you're, I want to stay right there for just 1 second for my own edification.
Yeah.
The first time, and I've told you this, I was doing a tracker review.
Mm-hmm.
So I typed in tracker knife on YouTube, and your video come up, and it was just the thumbnail. It's the way you were standing. And I said, well, look at this guy here. I bet I'll learn something. I bet you I've watched that video 10 damn times, and I have learned something. But if you would, that's the first time I had really heard anybody talk about a fleshing tool. Would you take just a second and just kind of explain? Because you're explaining to me, I ain't even gonna lie. Just give us a little knowledge there.
The object of the game was they are harvesting these animals, and the big cash crop here is the hide of them. So deer hide, buffalo hide. The hide trade started in the 1200s and went all the way through the mid 1800s. It ended with the buffalo, but it had started with deer. In the early 1700s, whenever the French first got to Alabama in 1721, I think it was, because they got here in 1719, they exported 300,000 deer hides out of Mobile going back to France. That was the leather industry, see? And what this tool does is you've taken the hide off of the animal, and there's fatty deposits and stuff like that on the hide. You have to scrape that off. And so the back of the knife was used, and quite often they would have a beam, which is a log angled up at you. You would drape the hide over it, and then you would push away from you and scrape this off. Well, imagine how big a buffalo hide is. We're talking about like a 10 by 12 room when you open that thing up. And so you're draping it over a beam, and the back curve of that buffalo skinner, you used it to scrape the fatty deposits and stuff off the hide. The edge is only used to just nick something here or there. The actual, what we call a skinning knife, the ripper, was a long straight knife that you opened up and peeled the hide off of the animal. And then the buffalo skinner was the skinning the fatty stuff off. What Nesmunk did was he took one of those and he cut it off. A lot of times you could go to a hardware store and they sold the knife blades, and they were just for shipping purposes. They didn't ship them in a sheath, and they didn't ship them with handles. It was just all the blades lined up in a wooden box. And you'd go in and you'd buy the blade, a pair of rivets, and a pair of wood handles that were locally made, and you put it together and tap it together with a hammer right quick, and that was your knife, you know. And they were kind of like the butcher knife blade, the straight blade, the buffalo skinner blade, and people would modify these knives because it was like a generic shape to their usage. Well, what Nesmunk was doing in his time, if you read him carefully, he's talking about he's eating stuff out of tins, which was sort of a new process that was getting popular and cheap enough. And so he had tins of meat, tins of jelly, tins of butter, tins. Well, he cut off or took a broke one, reshaped the tip, and there's a hump on the back of it. That's where we're going around the curve, right? Well, if you ever use one for cooking breakfast, you figure out that's a perfect spatula in a camp kitchen, because you turn around backwards and that hump is perfect for flipping meat over in a pan or scooping up pancakes or whatever, or going into a can and scooping out butter, jelly, whatever. It's a cooking tool. That's what the hump on the back really excels at. But you got to get out and start using it in the field, and you'll finally figure out, oh, that's what that does. It acts like a spatula, you know.
And getting used to using that blade shape as well, because I did a Nesmunk video, and I thought, man, this thing don't cut very well. It should, and that started my realization. So the next video with a Nesmunk was way better as far as the actual, because I was understanding sometimes you got to change up a little bit. Sometimes you got to change that hand position a little bit.
And you look
between a Nesmunk and a Kephart.
Well, one more thing, and I'll jump to Kephart. But he was carrying a big two-blade pocket knife. That was his primary cutting knife. So one of those blades would probably been a razor, and the other edge was a good robust edge, depending on what the job was. Well, the belt knife would then be used for other duties, like in this, he's using it for cooking, for processing, for stuff like that. The small pocket knife be the real razor for doing the real serious cutting up. Like I said, it doesn't cut that well. But once you start using it in a cooking idea of using the small 8-inch skillets and things like that, you'll see where this thing was a great tool for a camp. Now, Kephart had a different idea. He wanted a straight, small knife that was a certain length, fit his hand well, and gave him a good knife that he could skin with, he could rip with and cut with. He processed food well with it, because you're going to eat a couple times a day if life is going good. You don't get to clean skin on a game unless you get lucky. So more than likely, you're going to do a lot more cutting up of taters than you are of cutting up deer. So you need a knife that'll work. And that small knife really, really excelled in that is a working knife of doing woodscraft up close. And you look at the size of a Mora, and you look at a Kephart knife, similar size dimension. The blade is almost the same length as the handle. And so it works out really good. It keeps it close to you so you can do close work. It's not this big blade sticking out here that you got to worry about. It's something I can work precisely. And whenever he's doing his job, and we know, this is not a detriment to the man, but he was a heavy drinker. And so he had something he could control easily when he had quite a bit to drink. And so that is reflective of it. I knew a gentleman years ago that was a a Korean War vet, and he had a drinking problem. It was because of his PTSD from the war. But he carried this. It was a hacksaw blade that had been put into a wooden handle with about maybe a half inch of the blade sitting down. He'd sharpened it into a knife blade. Well, it had like a 3-inch handle and a 1-inch blade. Not maybe really like 3/4 inch. But he cleaned fish with it. And I asked him one time, why don't you get a bigger knife? He said, I hurt myself. Dead drunk, he could clean fish. You know, I mean, that's not a thing I would recommend, but he knew, you know, what worked. He'd put his thumb on the back and let it like a guide. It was almost like a safety thing. He'd put his thumb and, you know, knew exactly where it was, so he wasn't going to stick himself.
Yeah,
so,
that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like an 1800s premise.
Yeah.
Making a knife. I think sometimes we lose sight of that. You know, a lot of blade shapes, to me, and I've said this and I mean this, every blade shape that's going to be made has been made. Every blade shape has already been made.
Something that was real eye-opener to me, it was on one of the BBC programs, and it was in England, and somewhere not far from London, they had found, London was founded as a Roman town, a Roman garrison.
Right. Londinium.
They had found a Roman surgeon for one of the legions who had been buried, and they had buried him with his tools. And this is like 4,000 years ago, whatever it was. Well, these are bronze tools. And so the guy had brought them to the College of Medicine there in England, which is one of the big repositories of medical history and knowledge, and was showing them to the curator, and the curator's looking at it. The curator misunderstood and thought these were from the 1800s because the shape of them, whenever the archaeologist pointed out and said, no, these are Roman. He said, it can't be Roman. He said, these are Roman. He said, let me show you something. He went over to a case and opens up and comes walking back and picks up 2 tools, and they're identical. He said, this is only used in brain surgery. Nowhere else. It was invented in the 1930s. I mean, other than the handles, they're identical. And he went to picking up and matching to the modern, it's identical, you know. And so you can't come up with a new blade design. Somebody somewhere came up with it, you know.
Yeah. You can improve it. You can make it bigger. You can make it longer. You can affect the handles. And sometimes people get upset. There's nothing to be upset about. I just did a video, Blackie, and I actually saw one of your videos on the sax, right? Mm-hmm. The sax blade. Well, I just did this video. And here's the thing. Here's the first thing. This is actually the Alpha Norseman, what it's called. And we always want to credit the Vikings or the 10th century. These blades have been found as far back as 5th century Frankish graves. Mm-hmm. Every blade shape that's going to be made has been made. And it's not really an argument, but to go to your point, it seems like necessity drives invention. Mm-hmm. Right?
I can fully see, and I'm guessing, okay, but knowing how precious metal was back in them days, and the way that you see that with the point downhill and that sharp angle coming that way to the back of the knife, broken sword, something, because when the battle was over, they went through the fields finding anything, to reclaim it, reuse it, whatever. And a broken one with that sharp point would be real useful. And then somebody went, hey, and probably started making them like that. It's like I had somebody I was talking to one time, and I said, this is just one of my pet little guesses that probably ancient man was probably finding along the seashore shark teeth, because he could make arrowheads out of that. And then whenever he moved inland and he couldn't get shark teeth, he figured out how to work flint to make shark teeth again. Because you look at an arrowhead and you look at a shark's tooth, that serrateds and everything, I get an idea that's where a lot of arrowheads start out with, probably shark teeth.
Yeah.
We're very adaptive. And once we learn how to do something, You put us in a new environment, and we try to take what we knew from back there and apply it to here. So, but I may have to change resources completely. I can't get the metal I had there, etc. And so, to me, it's just, we can't make bronze swords like they had at the time of the Battle of Troy. They're pulling them out of the ground, and they're still sharp after being in the ground 2,000 or 3,000 years. And when we test the metal of the bronze, it would be so ridiculous to try to refine bronze to that level. No, we went on with steel, but this was a weapon of war thousands of years ago, and it's still sharp in the ground. So yeah, they knew what they were doing.
Well, that and the Wurtz Damascus,
yes,
that nobody's been able to replicate. But here's the other thing too, though, and I think people sometimes lose this. The Wurtz Damascus was great steel for the day.
Mm-hmm.
For that day, it was their super steel. It would pale in comparison to steels of the day,
mm-hmm.
of our day.
Mm-hmm.
But because you hear some people talk, and you would think, and yes, Saladin did make castles to protect it,
mm-hmm.
but it went out for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
It was replaced with better steel. So we went that way, and that's fine. We can go any way you want. But here's what I was going to ask you. We've talked about your belt knife.
Yes.
We've talked about your chopper.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a question I ask every single person that comes on, whether it's here or Blade Talk or whatever. What is the knife? It doesn't have to be your most expensive. It doesn't have to be your favorite. It doesn't have to have it. Do you have a knife that if you walk by it, it's going in your pocket? Point blank period. You may not even want to, but you see it, and it's got to go in your pocket.
Yeah. If I'm carrying a belt knife, I feel guilty for not toting that. I mean, this is the prototype. I have the actual Blackbird. That's the refinement of this, the improvements of this in AEBL. And yes, is a slightly better knife. But I feel guilty because I ain't toting this. I mean, it's part of me, I remember an old guy that told me one time, he said, it walks in my soul. Mm-hmm. I will have a pocket knife on me. Unless I'm going in a courthouse or something like that, I'm going to have a pocket knife on me. And my day-to-day, I'm going to have that Victorinox. But now, do I feel naked if I had one of my old Barlows? No, I'd feel fine with it. It's because everybody's got that one, mm-hmm. that it builds on it. Either it's the memories, how well it fits, how well it works, how you were able to depend on it in a crisis and it brought you through it, whatever. And that is true of just about everything. I've had people say, why don't you get rid of that old hat? It looks like hell. If I'm going in the woods, I got my hat. Yeah. It's just the way it is. And to me, that's part of the enjoyment of it, of this greater thing that we enjoy of blades and knives and etc. is trying out the new design that you've never tried out before. Good, bad, whatever. Trading knives with other people. Because I tried this and not so big. How about we swap for this, that? That's fun. And then you got those that you're never, ever, ever going to get rid of. Along that line, the story I wanted to tell you, you asked me about, having a haversack and all like that, but there was another story I was going to tell you about, and it goes with this knife. Now, this is a K-Bar 1607 that is so wore out. I got this knife when I was 8 years old. I had got this much smaller 1604, I think it was, about half this size, for a birthday present for my father. And I had it for about a week and I broke it. The lock broke on it and it just folded up. And it said it had a lifetime warranty. So I wrote out my little note. I put it in a brown envelope and I mailed it back to K-Bar, my little handwritten note by a little, 8-year-old, 7-year-old, saying that I didn't think much of a knife that broke cutting rope. 6-7 months went by. And then my stepmother gets a thing with my name on it for a package at the post office. And so we go and sign for it. And she come in and said, that's him, it's to him. And I opened it up and there was this knife and a handwritten letter from the then vice president of K-Bar saying, maybe you need a bigger knife. I guess somehow it went up the chain of command. So I carried this knife in my back pocket from the time I was 8 till I was 28. Okay. So when I finally retired it and went to other knives, it was like cutting my arm off. I have cleaned deer. I have done everything with that knife. It's wore down. You can see. But the time this knife really saved me was I had been approached by a member of the family that a distant relative had passed away. And he lived down in North Florida, actually, right on the Alabama-Florida border, but right in that area. And the family was asking me if I wanted to go down there and kind of keep an eye on the place because the only living relative was the daughter and she lived in assisted living somewhere else. And the family's going to have to work out all who gets what. And so he had some land down there that was up against a big timberland company. And so I had remembered going there when I was like 9 or 10. And here I am, an adult at that time. I was probably in my early 20s. And so I vaguely remembered how to get down to that place. And so when the word got to me, I remembered there was a pond on that sucker. And that was fishing opportunity because I remember big fish in that pond when I was a kid. I remember the family would argue about who could go down there and fish, things like that. And so when I got that word, I took off work a little bit early and I drove down there. And it was on Friday afternoon. And it took a little bit of shaking the memory. But, let me tell you how remote this was when I get down there. The old paved road that went down there and had been blocked off at the end. At some point, a little bridge had gone out. And they just dumped dirt and blocked it off. Grass was growing up in the road. Every crack had, a foot and a half of grass type stuff. It was early February, and nobody comes down here. So I finally found the little farmhouse. Yes, this is it. Sun's going down. I just want to find the pond right quick. I'm all on fire. I've got no gear with me. I've just got that in my back pocket. I throw that light little windbreaker on me. It's probably about 52 degrees at that point. Pulled the car around behind the house, went down the little trail, trying to see if I could see. And this is planted pines. And for northern friends you don't understand, it's just rows and rows of pine trees. And the pines will smother out everything underneath them. But along the edge, you can have big, dense patches of briars, yopons, whatever. Sunlight can come under the trees from the side. But from above out in the middle, forget it. It's a green desert. And so as I'm trying to figure out where this is, I thought I caught a glimpse of water shimmering toward the sunset through the pines. There's rough trees down there, so that means an opening. So I start cutting through all the pines to get down there. And I got down to all these yopons and stuff, and I'm working my way through them. And then the ground fell out from under me, literally. I fell into a sinkhole. Now, I fell about 10 or 12 feet down. How far is that? That's the height of an 18-wheeler trailer. I fell straight down into that hole. The ground just fell away with me. At the bottom of it, I crashed into about 4 to 6 inches of water. The opening down there is about the size of the inside of an 18-wheeler trailer, to give you a rough idea, with only a hole up there that I fell through about the size of a kid swimming pool, one of them kiddie pools. I'm wet. I'm looking at it and break a bone coming in. Now let's take charge of this situation, because you're going to have your freak out moment when this happens. And I had mine. Hey, there's no way to get back up to that hole. B, no one knows where I am. C, even the family members that are close to me have no idea how to get here, even if they knew where I'd come to. I didn't tell anybody I was coming down here. It might be months for the word filtered back through that they even told me about the place. I got no supplies on me. I can't get back out that hole. The car's parked behind that house on a dead end road that nobody comes down. This is how people just go whoosh, and you don't know what
Yeah.
will happen. They're gone. More than likely, now that I've started that up there, it's going to collapse in on me and bury me alive. If I'm alive, I'm not going to die of thirst. There's muddy water in the bottom of it, but I'm probably going to die of hypothermia because I'm wet and the temperature dropping. It's going to be in the mid 30s tonight. And what have you got? So after you have your freak out moment, go ahead and get it out of your blood. Just do it. I did. And after you said some choice words and picked up dirt clods and throw them at the wall and everything else, and scream and holler, that was one of my favorite lines in Apollo 13. Whenever he says, "All right, gentlemen, what are your intentions? Because we can ricochet around in this trash can for the next half hour, but what are we doing?" And I got to thinking, there's only one thing I can do. And so I pulled that out of my back pocket. I went up to the wall and I went cutting holes into the wall about the size of a half a loaf of bread. I went to cutting steps and handholds to climb. And I got up to where I got to where that curvy, I picked a place that had a little bit of roots, just barely see what little light was left. And it took me till it was black in there by the time I got up where I could feel the roots. And I just went to cutting until I got up to the roof, and then I went to stabbing the roof and tearing the roof off a little at the time, risking this whole thing tearing loose and just dropping on me. But what do you got? There isn't the best idea. There's what there is, and this is
Right.
your own chance, you know. And I kept going. Now I went in the hole somewhere around 4 p.m. because sundown was like 4:45 or something. So somewhere around 4 p.m. is when I went in that hole. And a couple of minutes after midnight is when I crawled out.
Golly.
I finally cut a hole high enough. You'd have to just come down, go over and go to the upper end of the hole and get water, muddy water to drink. There's nothing else. But staying active kept my body warm, so to speak. I was still shivering, but I'm moving. And when I remember when I hit that piece and a hunk fell in, and it was like half the size of a kitchen trash can, fell in, and it's just a miracle it didn't take me with it. And I felt cold air rush in the hole. And I started grabbing a hold of roots. I could see stars in a couple places. And when I finally brought that arm out and grabbed a hold of pine straw, you know, and then cut more holes, and you would think you would be so elated. I wasn't. The terror factor went to 10 for fear that side was going to come in, you know. But I did get the holes. I did lean out. I went to grabbing a hold and getting a hold of roots, and I pulled myself out by that little bitty Yopon's roots. And then the hardest part was walking back to the car. I mean, you'd think you'd be overjoyed, but every step,
Yeah.
you wondered if the ground was just going to fall out. Is there more down here, more sinkholes, you know, and you can't see them for the pine straw.
Yeah.
Only when my car pulled up on the road. That was the first time I, you know, was like, took the breath that I'd made it out of there. And that's the reason that knife will never be gotten rid of. When it counted, that $20 hardware store knife is what got me home. So yeah, that rides in that collection.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Now, kind of around that Wingman 115, man, to everybody that's coming in, welcome. I'm glad you're here. Gerbs is posting all kind of links. Welcome in, guys. If you got a question for Blackie, while we got him here, Timbo 437's here. Y'all ask. But here's what I want to follow up with that with Blackie, because we talked about it a little beforehand. In the situation where you had wandered off to the lookout, in this situation, in any situation, time, for lack of a better term, time's money. how quick do you need to get over the poor, pitiful me? You talk about decisiveness. Hey, I'm here now. You know, I walked 5 miles in. It's 30 minutes till dark. When do you need to make those decisions? And talk to me a little bit about decisiveness.
Okay. If you're in such a situation where you've walked in, you've got turned around, okay, you're not lost. You just don't know where you're at the moment. Okay, but that's one of those mental things you just got to click and realize that I'm still on planet Earth. I'm still in North America. I'm still in the state of Alabama. I'm still in this county. You know, I just don't know where there is. Well, I get lost in a mall. You know, there are a lot of hospitals I've got turned around in because all the floors look alike. So the thing is, you just got to take a deep breath and say, okay, what do I know? Okay. And what I teach a class called Navigation with Nothing, where I point out to you how the premise of that in the beginning of it is there's no such thing as a Star Trek teleporter at this time. So the reason you're here is you came here. So if I drove my car down that road and it broke down, I tell you what, follow the road. Don't cut across the woods. If I come down here to camp and I'm going camping in Boone National Forest or wherever, the best thing you can do is grab that phone, bring up your GPS, and get a satellite picture of where you're going, and then pull back and take a look, you know, and go, okay, I'm coming in on the road to the south, and then, I go in there at the thing, and I go up, and there's the camp area I'm going to start at. That's where I'm going to park my car. All right. Does the road go all the way across these woods, across the bottom? It does. What's on the right side? What's over here on the east side? Well, out of the woods, it turns into agricultural fields. Okay. What's up here on the north side? Way up there, like 5 miles up, you got that river running across. Okay. And what's on the west over here? Well, you go about 2 miles down from where I'm going to turn, and there's a big housing area. All right. Now I'm in a box. Road to the bottom, agricultural fields that way, houses that way, and a river that way. I'm in a box. If I get completely, oh my God, I've got in here and I don't know where I'm at, what am I going to do? All I got to do is head south. I hit that road I drove in on, right? Mm-hmm. So that mindset of knowing that. Now, how you make the determination. It's natural to, when you get turned around, crossed up, or put into these situations, you've got to take store of it. So I can tell you from personal injury, when I have had bad falls or whatever, that the first thing you do whenever you get your eyeballs back in your head and then you kind of stop seeing stars is take the deep breath. Don't be in a hurry to get up or whatever, and then go through like a little check of what works. Move slow. Okay, the hand works, the arm works. Okay, I can do that, and just figure out where you're hurt. And just because my legs hurt don't mean the rest of my body's broke. I can adapt. You just find what works. Use what works. Don't concentrate on what's broke. Concentrate on what works. I need to put this back into place, or I need to do whatever. Can I call for help and they get to me? No. Okay, well then I'm going to have to find a way out of here. Or I'm going to have to make somebody come get me, you know. And one of my big things I teach in survival is, especially anywhere in the eastern woodlands, anywhere east of Mississippi, you got into some big camp out or whatever, and I'm lost, dude. I have no clue. And I didn't take the time to put myself in a box. And so, well, if you're in the woods, build a big fire. And start piling green stuff on that fire and generate a lot of smoke. Now, they're going to tell you that's a signal fire for aircraft. Bull. That may work in Arizona.
Yeah.
In the eastern woodlands and our thick woods, it might take an hour for it to filter back up for the trees to be high enough. And even then, you don't know. But I bet you if you build a great big fire, you got plenty of resources, build two. and just keep throwing green stuff on it and generate as much smoke as you can, I bet you a landowner's going to show up pretty soon wanting to know why his woods are on fire.
Yeah.
Because I've met a lot of farmers and stuff like that have looked out on their woods and seen smoke over there and go, whoa, who's over there? And they'll come, they know these woods.
Yeah.
They know the direct path to you. They'll come strutting up, going, why are you on my property? Yes, sir, I am very sorry. I'll leave now. Guide me back to the road, sir, and I'll never be on your land again, sir. That's, you're trespassing. Yes, sir, call the law. Get me out of here.
Well, I tell you what really, and I've brought up the video before, and Timbo just brought it up too. I watched one of my favorite videos of yours is modding, when you modded decay bar.
Mm-hmm.
But what really got me, once I watched your first video on the tracker, then I deep dove all the knives, right?
Mm-hmm.
But really what turned me on and I might have even said this to you before, but what turned me on to, hey, I need to start really taking this stuff seriously as far as being prepared. We were out south of here on probably 4,000-5,000 acres, something down south. They're putting in a huge subdivision, right? And a mall and all of this stuff. Well, none of that's there yet, right? Mm-hmm. So we're out and we're just cutting line, surveying, cutting line. We'd already done our location. And so I talked to the crew chief and he said, Scab, just head through the woods that way. He just pointed. He goes, man, we're 100 yards from the truck that way. Boom.
Mm-hmm.
He said, head through there. We're going to cut this last patch. And I said, okay. Well, I start cutting across, Blackie. And at one point, and for those of you who don't know, in the South, like Blackie said, when you see rows of pines, those are slash pines. It is a cash crop. Mm-hmm. And what people will do, you've heard the term drain the swamp. A lot of landowners, to drain that swamp, will then plant pine trees to raise the land level. Now what was wet land is dry land they can sell. Anyway, I'm on a plot like that. So I start walking. Well, I go about, 25 feet. And you know how the old fire lanes out through that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I step right into one, waist deep in water.
Yep.
It's 50 degrees. Now, it's never really cold in Florida, but it's 50 degrees. I come out, I fall. I get up. Now I start looking around, and there's some damn fire lanes, and I got turned, and I mean, just like that, I got turned around. Mm-hmm. And if you've ever been in the woods and it's 4:30 and it's going to be dark at 5, and you're not used to being there, little bit of pain. So I made probably one of the biggest mistakes. I started moving in an unknown direction faster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got to get out of here. Yeah.
Now, and it's stupid. It's panic. It's not fear. It's panic. And it took me about 3 or 4 minutes. And then I was just like, you know what? Wait a minute. Stop. And I listened, and I was able to hear some of the guys and hear the trucks, and I made my way. But in my mind, I thought, you know what? If I was out here by myself, I'd be screwed. And that's when I really started taking a harder look and taking this stuff seriously, because I've grown up in the woods, not camping, none of that. I've said that, but just, it wasn't nothing as kids. You go out in the woods and play. Mom and Dad ain't gonna let you stay in the house. Right. So those type of things. Tell me 3 or 4 things that you did. If Blackie Thomas is going in the woods, don't matter if he's tracking, don't matter if it's scouting, don't matter if it's a damn nature walk to take a whiz. Give me 3 or 4 things that are always on your person.
I am always going to have the ability to make fire on me of some degree. On my key ring, I carry one of the hot spark little ferro rods like the Boy Scouts sell. That's a fallback to everything. I'm going to have that knife. With the saw and that, I can generate a big shower of hot sparks. I'm going to have something in my wallet, usually like notes, receipts, or whatever, that can be shredded up to make into tinder to get a fire going. I'm going to have a blade on me of some kind, like I said, guaranteed. I'm going to have some sort of noise maker on me, which can be used as a whistle or whatever to attract attention. If not, I don't know how to make them out of a piece of bark right quick. Because you can whistle a whole lot longer than you can holler. Your voice will easily give up, but whistle will keep screaming for hours. If I'm going in the woods, I'm going to have water or something on me, because that's the biggie thing. Mechanical injury can happen anytime. Now, down here in our woods, if you've been out that type of stuff, we used to call it a chuck hole. And what it is, it's where a pine tree died and rotted out, and it's left a round hole going down 3 or 4 feet, and it's covered over with pine straw. You can't see it. And you will step, and your leg will disappear straight down the hole, and you go forward, and it only breaks the top of your thigh, where it wedges and your full body weight and snap your leg. That mechanical injury like that. So you can be doing everything right and have that kind of injury. So I need to be able to build a fire. I can scrape stuff together. Even my leg broke to get something going to A, generate smoke, B, generate a little bit of heat. Is it going to suck? Oh, yeah, it's going to. But I have the ability, and that's the thing. I'm a big advocate of learning all the primitive skills, but never rely on primitive skills. If you've got a choice, have a lighter in your pocket, because things can go bad real quick. And I had a fellow that wanted to do a challenge one time years ago in a mountain man thing. And I agreed to it. And then once we got out there, the challenge was build a fire, but your left leg is broke. So you had to crawl around on elbows on the ground with one leg splint because your leg is broke. And he wanted to make a bow drill. Okay, you have fun. I had other ways to make a fire. Let's see. Did you ever, for fun, think about a hypothetical plan on how you would survive in a world? Yes. I took and spent quite a bit of time thinking about that. Yeah, never go in the woods without some sort of fire rod on you or whatever. I did think about that and how it would play out and what I would need for myself to take care of me and my family. And I learned enough useful plants that I can eat, because you'll look at it, not even pay it any attention. It's weed. But times get hard, I could eat it. You got to be a poacher mindset, because everybody is trying to do it. So the cows are going to disappear real quick. Chicken's going to disappear real quick. Wild game is going to be disappearing real quick. Trot lines work real good. Hiding them underwater so you can't see it from the surface, but I know where to stick a pole out there and pull it in. That's a poacher's mindset.
Talk to us a little bit about that really quick, that trout, because I know you told a story when we were camping of how you kept a trout line downtown. If you would, just quickly tell us that, because that's an essential skill.
I made up an anchor that had a ring in it that I could run a rope through. So went out there like 2 o'clock in the morning, nobody's around, and I took out into this creek out in the middle of it, it's about this deep out there, and I sank that out there. My trot line has a stopper so it won't go through that eye. And from there back to the other end, which is another one that's a couple of feet off the bank that you can't see. And so it's like a clothesline. I start pulling the line and it will just run through the eye. Well, I can get up on the bank and I can bait my trot line and pull it, and it goes out and it goes underwater where you can't see it. And then I secure it and put it down. So when you walk up and look during the day, you don't see anything. But I've got floats on the line so they would stand up and float off the bottom to catch catfish, fish, stuff like that. And I'll show up at 2 o'clock in the morning with a bucket, wade out there waist deep, and fill up a wash tub worth of fish, rebait, and put it back out. Where do you get the bait? I gut the fish that I just caught and then rebait the hooks with the guts. You'll catch all the turtles and stuff like that real quick. And it was a way to do it where nobody could see what you were doing, because everybody's going to be doing this. Everybody's trying to find food. 99% of the people don't have skills. And so they're looking for some big red flag of, oh, that looks like, and then they're going to investigate. If they don't see it, they're not going to go out there. They ain't going in that water. And like my Native American ancestors said, one of the best places to find game is in the swamps. Well, the white settlers were scared to death to go in them. Oh, you heard stories about the giant gators and the snakes, and yeah, there are. There's a lot of game in there as well. And so if you could just fade back into them swamps, people in the bayous will tell you, they don't come in here looking.
Right.
Why they don't come in here? But nature in there is a thriving thing, and so you can thrive pretty easy in there once you know what to do and how to hide. And that's the thing. You got to look at poachers. And if you look around on internet, especially if you'll look at game warden sites, a lot of time they're talking about poachers and talking about how they caught the poacher. You can learn a lot that way. Old Dan was telling me about how one of the guys back in the 70s, he was a nature guy, tree hugger, and he was showing nature videos on coyotes and wolves and deer and everything else. Well, Dan didn't look at it as a naturalist. He looked at it teaching him how to catch deer and how to catch coyotes because their gestation period is this and everything. So the information is there. It's just how you mine it, you see.
Right. Absolutely. Well, a couple things now. I'm not going to hold you long. We've been on about an hour and 15 minutes, so okay. I don't want to tie you up long. But we can stay how long as you want. I could listen to you all night long.
Well, let's go to an hour and a half. We'll call it good. How about that?
Sounds good to me. And in that, here's what I want to do. The Woodscraft Chonto.
Yes.
Okay. Got a challenge. Here's my challenge. I want you to take one weekend this fall as you're camping and only use that knife.
Okay.
For the weekend. Now, you can have your Victorinox.
Oh yeah.
But I want you to use that Woodscraft Chonto and let me know, because I had the designer on last night.
Okay. Who
is an avid outdoorsman. And when I told him I'd give it to you, he was excited. So if you don't mind, I just challenge, I want you to use it.
Okay.
You can modify it any way you need to.
Okay.
Modify it any way you need to. This one, I like this one. JB I think, JB, are you close to Blackie? I know you're an Alabama boy.
Oh, a couple. Yeah. A couple. In fact, when my family made such stuff, and right out of high school, I was approached by a law enforcement officer that he and I had butted heads quite a bit when I was coming through school, we shall say, like he was not always an angel. But there was somebody that had set up a still, and they were making bad stuff, really bad stuff. And when he came to me with it, and I said, well, it's got to be bad or you wouldn't even consider talking to me. He said, I know, but I got people sick, and we've got to find this and shut this down now. And I went and found it, and I said, have a way I can get a hold of you. And about 3:00 in the morning, I called the dispatcher, and she called him and got him, and I took him down in the woods, and we came to this one point and stopped, and I said, listen, and he could hear the thump keg going thump, thump, thump. I said, it's right down there in that bottom. And what it was, these yahoos had gone on a job in Georgia and was taking apart a plating plant and had brought home pipes from a plating plant. And the whiskey, the shine, had chemicals in it come leaching out of that pipe, and people getting deathly sick. And so
people don't realize, Blackie, when we talk about shine and steels and things like that, because I've drank a lot of it in my time, and I enjoy it. And my people from Brushy Mountain up there in North Carolina, in Wilkes County, North Carolina, made a lot of it. But that's serious business too. I mean, we joke about it, but when you start talking about hurting people, or back in the day, they'd put a little antifreeze in it, put a little color in it. When you start talking about hurting people,
yeah,
these old boys in the South, you won't make it long. You might hurt a couple, but you won't make it long before
and
you
that
get
was the thing. The people that were doing it for their own use, or were doing it as a way to make money for the family. We're not talking about serious drug dealers. This was like we think people today that brew beer and wine for themselves. Same mindset here, guys. If somebody started making dangerous stuff like that, that brought too much heat and attention to an area real quick. So the guys that were doing that for their own personal use would be all over you in a heartbeat, for attracting that much attention. Yeah. And so it was a serious business. You just didn't decide, I think I'm going to put together a still. And no, no. You don't know what you're doing. And you right quick have family members on your butt in a hurry. You do not hurt people and stuff like that. You get too much attention to it.
Because the law in those situations, I've heard, the law will leave you alone, but you start hurting people, they can't leave you alone. And the truth is, I've had some really, really, really good shine out of South Georgia, out of Tennessee. We used to take peaches. I'd take a gallon of shine, and we'd cut up 4 or 5 peaches and stick them in that gallon jar. The worst mistake I ever made, Black, is eating one of them peaches, because it didn't taste like peach. It tasted like nitroglycerin.
Yeah.
I could not move. I mean, I could. That's the sickest I've drank it. Because if you guys, for those that don't know, if you just drink shine, you're not going to get hungover. You're just not. But you eat that peach, honest to God, Blackie, when I got home, how I got home, I don't know. I remember falling out of the car and crawling to the front steps. And I think my roommate found me the next day on that front. I swore. Because there wasn't nothing peachy about that. But I've had some good, and then I've had some, I've had some that I was like, nah. Because it can mess you up bad.
My family would take it and put a process that would add pecan flavor to it, and then they'd run it through peaches. And it was smooth, and it was just good sipping whiskey type deal. But it was very labor intensive, but it produced a very good product. But like I said, this was for our use, that type deal. But they took great pride, like Mama took pride in her biscuits. Well, Granddaddy took pride in his shine too. But all shine is alcohol at the most basic level.
That's it.
And, for the people that didn't know, you run it through the still several times, kind of cut it a little bit. And so 1X was for running the tractor or the car. I mean, that was paint thinner. You didn't drink that. It's way too strong. It's way too horrible. 2X, if your wife, your girlfriend, the dog was all pregnant at the same time, you drank 2X. 3X was standard shine. 4X was mama's milk. There's no alcohol left in it. It's just a flavor at that point. And so it was how it was done. I mean, these people took pride in what they created, and I had family members that made sorghum molasses. They made cane sugar. They made, all kinds of different things. And people took great pride in these other crafts, other than just making a living. My grandmother made quilts. And when I was a little boy and was crippled, I helped my grandmother make quilts. And I've got 3 of her quilts that I was a little kid sitting on the floor. She'd push the needle down, I'd pull it back and stick it back up to the loom, and that's a thing. But she took great pride in how well she could make a quilt. And so everybody had a skill, a talent, or whatever. And that's what made the family kind of interesting. I would give anything for some of my grandmother's fig preserves, because she mixed stuff in. It wasn't just straight figs. She added something into them figs whenever she fermented them things up, and they were good. And I remember my aunt that she went to make rum cake one Christmas and put too much rum in it. And it was rum mush, and the kids were not allowed to have any of this. So a couple of spoonfuls and you get snockered off that rum mush. But just enjoyed it and had good barter system. Everybody traded and worked with each other, you know.
Well, that's what I was going to say too, and that's nothing new. The Romans with their beer, it was the same thing. The first run through was for the men.
Yeah.
The second run through, was for guests. The third run through for the ladies. The fourth were for the kids, and everybody did it. But back then, if you had taxes, if you had whatever, well, a couple gallons of shine, people, and you made it right or whatever, you could sell or barter and get that money for your taxes.
Yeah.
The government didn't get their piece, and they kind of got upset.
Yeah, well,
before,
as long as they're getting their cut.
That's the truth. They don't give a shit. Hey,
as long as he gets his cut, gambling's illegal in the state of Alabama. We got how many casinos? Yeah, somebody's getting their cut.
Always. Hey, we got just a few minutes. Do me a favor. Tell the story. I've always loved this one. Your grandfather was on the back porch and knew there was a turtle on the stump for dinner.
Right.
Tell us how he knew that.
Okay. My grandfather being a woodsman, he spent so much time in the woods, etc. He was very versed in the environment and how the animals interacted with each other. So I went over to visit one time, and I had come out in the backyard, and he'd sitting on the back porch, and he heard something, and he said, that big turtle is up on that log down there. You couldn't see the pond from the porch. It went up a little hill and down. And I went, what? He said, that turtle's up on that log. So I walked up the top of the hill, and sure enough, that big turtle was on that log out in the middle of the pond. Well, how did he know it? The crow would go to scolding him. He had wire on that log. And so that's how Granddaddy would get the turtles out of his pond. They're eating his fish, right? So he'd go out there and put fish guts and stuff on that wire up on that floating log, which was anchored. And he'd sit back with a 22 and wait for the turtles to come up, and he'd get turtle soup. Well, this big boy had wised up, and so he wouldn't come up if anybody was up there. But the crows would come down and peck the pieces of meat and stuff around in there. And if that turtle was up there, they couldn't come down there. So Granddaddy sitting on the back porch is hearing that crow scold in a certain way, that turtle. So he knew where that turtle was, even though he couldn't see the turtle. He would sit there and hear a dog barking at a neighbor's down the road and could tell you who was coming down the road by the way the dog barked, because he could tell the difference way he barked at different vehicles and things like that. And he'd say, Edmund's coming down, step out the road and flag him down for me. And I walk in there and there ain't even no dust. I don't even know what he's talking about. And then like 2 minutes later, you'd see a truck come around way down the dirt road and come up. And I'd wave him down and say, Granddaddy wants to talk to you a minute. And he'd, oh, okay. And he'd come in, and how'd you know he was coming? Because that dog barks a certain way when his old truck that squeaks a certain way goes by, and it aggravates the dog. So he was very in his environment. He was deeply into his environment and knowing what was going on in that environment.
That's a skill set.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, I want to have you on again if you'll accept.
Sure.
Love to have you on. I've had a great time. Guys, thank y'all. EDC for fun. Good night. I know you got to go. Hey, before we go, I want to say happy birthday to my guy Grugs. Brother, happy birthday to you. So, guys, we're going to wrap it up. Blackie, thank you, man. Thank you so much.
Glad to be supported, brother.
Thank you for being here. And I'll tell you what, if you would, when we sign off, just hang out a minute, and then we'll call it from there. Guys, listen, I want to say this too. I love you. God knows I do. God bless you. Thank you for being here. I want to thank each and every one of you who commented on that Tops review. Y'all went a long way in helping me out with Tops. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. That's all I'm going to say about it right now. we'll get into it more. But I just want to thank y'all. Well, guys, listen, enjoyed having y'all. Hopefully Blackie will be on again. We're going to call it a night. Brandon, good seeing you, buddy. Open Air Fish Market. Love y'all. Listen, I'm Scab. He's Blackie. You're not. And we'll see y'all later.